The acidic rain hissed against Dr. Cashin Reed's environment suit as he carefully picked his way through the twisted remnants of the Kepler-7 Research Institute. 6 days into the rescue operation, and they'd found nothing but ruins and remains. The colony's destruction had been methodical, precise, and according to his readings, the atmospheric contamination suggested someone had deliberately targeted the facility's experimental terraforming systems. Base, this is Reed, he reported, adjusting his scanner. Section 14 shows minimal structural integrity, requesting permission to proceed with caution. The response crackled through his comm. Acknowledged, Reed, you have 15 minutes before the next chemical storm front hits. Make it count. Cashin activated his suit's enhanced sensors, designed specifically for detecting life signs through debris. The Ladarian colonists had different biological signatures than humans, making them easier to distinguish if any had survived. He'd studied their physiology extensively during his xenomedicine training: bioluminescent markings, enhanced night vision, and remarkably resilient cellular structures. A faint ping drew his attention to a partially collapsed laboratory chamber. The reading was weak but distinct, definitely Ladarian. Moving carefully across the unstable floor, Cashin approached what appeared to be a sealed emergency stasis pod, half buried under fallen ceiling panels. "I've got something," he transmitted, heart rate quickening. "Possible survivor in emergency stasis, beginning extraction." Using his suit's enhanced strength systems, Cashin carefully cleared the debris. The pod's power supply was nearly depleted, but its occupant was alive. Through the frosted transparisteel, he could make out the silvery blue markings characteristic of Ladarian females. "Hold on," he murmured, working to stabilize the pod's power supply. "I'm getting you out of here." The release mechanism responded to his medical override, and the pod's seal broke with a soft hiss. As the cover retracted, the Ladarian woman's eyes fluttered open, stunning violet irises with bioluminescent flecks that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. Her silvery markings were intricate, suggesting she was in her early maturity phase, perhaps equivalent to a human in their late 20s. "You're safe," Cashin said softly, using the basic Ladarian phrases he'd learned. "I'm a doctor, can you understand me?" She blinked slowly, then responded in perfect standard English. "Yes, I understand." Her voice was hoarse from disuse but clear. How long?" "The attack was 12 days ago," Cashin answered, running his medical scanner over her. "You're the first survivor we've found. I'm Dr. Cashin Reed with the Interstellar Emergency Response Team. Can you tell me your name?" "Nyria," she whispered. "Nyria Valrath. Am the lead researcher in xenobiology." She tried to sit up but swayed weakly. "Easy," Cashin steadied her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're severely dehydrated and your body temperature is low. We need to get you to our medical facility before the next storm hits." As he helped her from the pod, Nyria's legs buckled. Cashin caught her, supporting her weight against his suit. The moment their bodies made contact, he felt her entire frame go rigid. Her bioluminescent markings flared briefly before dimming to an almost ghostly pale blue. "I'm sorry," she whispered, trembling. "It's just the way you—" A violent tremor shook the building, cutting off her words. Cashin's helmet sensors screamed a warning. The storm was arriving ahead of schedule. "We need to move now," he said, scooping her up despite her weak protest. "The structure's not going to hold much longer." Nyria's fingers clutched at his suit as he navigated the treacherous path back through the ruins. Her head tucked against his shoulder, and he could feel her shivering, though whether from cold or emotion he couldn't tell. They barely reached the rescue shuttle before the storm hit in full force. As Cashin secured Nyria in the medical bay, he noticed her watching him with an unsettling intensity, her luminescent markings pulsing with an erratic rhythm he hadn't seen documented in any xenomedicine text. "Thank you," she said softly as he administered fluids and temperature regulation treatments. "But why did you come back after what happened?" "What do you mean?" Cashin asked, puzzled. "We came as soon as we received the distress signal." Nyria's expression shifted to one of confusion, then understanding, then something like grief. "Of course you wouldn't know the signal. It wasn't from us, it was from them. The ones who—" She trailed off, her markings dimming to almost nothing. "Rest now," Cashin said gently, nodding, her vital signs showing increasing stress. "You're safe and we can talk more once you're stronger." As the shuttle lifted off, carrying them through the poisoned storms toward the orbiting medical station, Cashin couldn't shake the feeling that there was far more to Nyria's survival than simple luck. The way she'd reacted to his touch, her cryptic words about the distress signal, something wasn't adding up. But for now, watching her finally drift into an exhausted sleep, her markings gradually steadying to a soft, peaceful glow, he focused on what mattered. She was alive and he'd found her. Everything else could wait. What he didn't know then was how finding Narya Valrath would change not just his understanding of the Kepler-7 tragedy, but his entire life. As the shuttle broke atmosphere, leaving the ruined colony behind, the first threads of their destinies began to weave together, a pattern neither of them could yet see, but one that would reshape their understanding of loss, love, and the infinite ways the universe brings broken pieces together to form something new. 3 days into Narya's recovery aboard the medical station Horizon, the nightmares began. Cashin found her in the observation pod, pressed against the curved window, her bioluminescent markings flickering like dying stars. The artificial gravity was set to Ladarian standard, slightly lighter than Earth normal, making her silver-white hair float ethereally around her face. "The dreams won't stop," she said without turning, her reflection ghostly against the backdrop of Kepler-7's poisoned atmosphere. "Every time I close my eyes, I see them, the shadows moving through our halls wearing our faces." Cashin approached carefully, having learned that sudden movements could trigger her markings to flare defensively. "You mentioned shapeshifters before, during your fever." The mimics, Narya's fingers traced patterns on the glass that reminded Cashin of complex molecular structures. "We thought they were a myth, stories to frighten children, but they found something in the deep caves during the early colonization, something that should have stayed buried." The station's lights dimmed automatically, simulating night cycle. In the darkness, Narya's markings cast soft blue patterns across the floor. Cashin noticed they had shifted from their earlier chaotic rhythm to something more measured, almost musical. "The research facility," he said quietly, "it wasn't just for terraforming, was it?" Narya finally turned to face him. "We were studying adaptation, evolution. The caves contained fossils of creatures that could restructure their own DNA at will, perfect survival machines. The military implications were significant," her voice caught. "But we didn't understand what we were dealing with. They weren't fossils, they were dormant." Cashin felt a chill despite the regulated temperature, and someone woke them up. Not someone something, Narya's markings pulsed with remembered fear. A signal deep space origin, it activated them all at once. Within hours they had perfectly replicated our forms, our voices, even our memories. The only way to tell us apart was, she gestured to her bioluminescent markings. They couldn't copy these, not perfectly. The patterns were wrong, somehow hollow. Moving closer, Cashin noticed she was shivering. Without thinking, he removed his medical jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The moment the fabric settled, Narya's markings flared brilliantly, then settled into a warm, steady glow he hadn't seen before. "Your kindness," she whispered, pulling the jacket tighter. "It reminds me of, but no, that's impossible." "Tell me," Cashin encouraged gently, sensing she needed to speak the words aloud. Narya's voice trembled. "There was a human scientist in our xenobiology division, Dr. Marcus Wade. He discovered the signal's origin, tried to warn us, but by then the mimics had already infiltrated the command structure. They used our own security systems against us, vented modified terraforming gases through the ventilation." Her markings dimmed to almost nothing. "Marcus got me to the stasis pod, but he stayed behind to destroy the research. To make sure the mimics couldn't access our full genetic database." Cashin watched as a single, luminescent tear traced down her cheek. "You were close." "We were going to be bonded," Narya admitted softly. "Our genetic compatibility was unprecedented. The first successful human-Ladarian pairing. He used to hold me just." She stopped abruptly, her markings flashing in what Cashin had learned to recognize as embarrassment. "I'm sorry, you don't need to hear this." "It's all right," Cashin said, carefully settling into a chair nearby. "Sometimes sharing memories helps them hurt less." Narya studied him with those striking violet eyes. "You've lost someone too." It wasn't a question, Cashin nodded slowly. "My sister, she was a terraforming engineer on Europa, equipment failure during an ice shelf survey." He rarely spoke of Jessica, but something about Narya's quiet presence made it feel natural. "She loved the stars, used to say they were windows into all the lives we might have lived." "Your people have beautiful ways of seeing things," Narya observed, finally moving away from the window to sit near him. "Marcus said something similar once about how human poetry and Ladarian bioluminescence were really the same thing, light finding its way through darkness." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Kepler-7's storms rage below. Cashin noticed Narya's markings had synchronized with the station's subtle power hum, a sign of relaxation he'd read about but never witnessed. Dr. Reed, she said suddenly, her tone shifting to something more urgent. There's something else you need to know about the signal that woke the mimics. It wasn't random. They were waiting for it. All those millennia in the caves, they were waiting for specific coordinates, a location. She met his eyes intently. There are more of them out there, and they're planning something bigger than just taking one colony. Before Cashin could respond, the station's proximity alerts blared to life. Through the observation window, they watched as a sleek, unmarked vessel emerged from behind Kepler-7's larger moon. That's not one of ours, Cashin said, already reaching for his comm unit. Naria's markings blazed with recognition and fear. No, she whispered, it's them. They found me. They know I survived. The ship's silhouette grew larger as it approached the station, its hull reflecting the dying light of the system's red dwarf star. In that moment, watching Naria's markings pulse with determination rather than fear, Cashin made a decision that would alter both their fates. Come with me, he said, taking her hand. To his surprise, she didn't flinch at the contact. Instead, her markings synchronized with his heartbeat. I know somewhere they won't think to look, but we have to move now. As they hurried through the station's corridors, alarms blaring around them, Cashin realized that finding Naria hadn't been the end of a rescue mission. It had been the beginning of something far more complex. Something that would challenge everything he thought he knew about life, loss, and the thin line between saving someone and being saved in return. The emergency shuttle cut through Kepler-7's upper atmosphere, its stealth systems engaged as Cashin piloted them toward the planet's dark side. Beside him, Naria's markings pulsed in sync with the navigation equipment's soft beeping, her eyes fixed on the toxic clouds below. The gardens are hidden in the eastern mountain range, she explained, adjusting the environmental readings. Our ancestors believed memories had physical form, energy that could be captured and preserved. The gardens were built to house the most important memories of our people. And you think the answers we need are there? Cashin asked, compensating for a particularly violent wind shear. Marcus left something there, a failsafe. Naria's markings briefly flickered with pain at speaking his name. He said if everything went wrong, I should return to the place where we first. She trailed off as the mountain range came into view. Even through the poisoned atmosphere, the peaks retained their haunting beauty, crystalline formations that seemed to catch and amplify what little light reached them. There, Naria pointed to a narrow valley. The entrance is camouflaged, but I can guide us in. Cashin landed the shuttle in a protected alcove, the rock formations providing natural cover from orbital scans. As they donned their environment suits, he noticed Naria's hands trembling slightly. We don't have to do this now, he said softly. The Mimic ship lost our trail when we dropped into the electromagnetic dead zone. Naria shook her head, her markings steady despite her obvious anxiety. No, it has to be now. The gardens, they're different after dark, the memories are stronger. They made their way through a hidden entrance, passing through several airlocks before reaching an enormous cavern. Cashin's breath caught at the sight. Countless crystalline structures rose from the ground like frozen waterfalls, each one containing swirling patterns of bioluminescence that matched the markings of the Ladarians. Living memory crystals, Naria explained, leading him deeper into the garden. They respond to our bioluminescence, storing and replaying moments of extreme emotional significance, births, deaths, discoveries, loves. Her voice softened on the last word. As they walked, the crystals seemed to wake, pulsing with gentle light. Occasionally, ghostly images would form in the crystalline surfaces, snippets of memories from generations of Ladarians. Cashin saw families, celebrations, moments of both joy and profound loss. Here, Naria stopped before a smaller crystal formation, partially hidden behind larger structures. This is where Marcus and I. She reached out, her markings synchronizing with the crystal's inner light. The surface shimmered, and suddenly the space around them filled with a holographic memory. Cashin watched as a slightly younger Naria appeared, her markings bright with excitement as she explained something to a tall, dark-haired human man, Marcus Wade. It was our first breakthrough, Naria said quietly, watching the scene play out. We discovered how to stabilize human-Ladarian genetic bonds. Marcus was so excited he couldn't wait for the formal announcement. He brought me here to celebrate, and he. In the memory, Marcus took hologram Naria's hands, his expression full of wonder and affection. The universe brought our species together for a reason, his voice echoed through the chamber. What we've discovered here isn't just about genetics, it's about possibility, about hope. The real Naria's markings pulsed with a complex pattern of grief and something else, something warmer. Cashin realized she was looking at him, not the memory. Your frequency, she said softly, your emotional signature, it's so similar to his. At first I thought I was imagining it, but here in the gardens where the memories are clearest. She stepped closer, her markings synchronizing with his heartbeat through their suits. You're not him, but the way you make me feel safe, the way you listen and understand, it's the same. Before Cashin could respond, the memory crystal pulsed with unexpected energy. The hologram shifted, showing Marcus alone, his expression urgent. Naria, if you're seeing this, it means everything went wrong, the recorded message began. The signal that woke the mimics, it wasn't random. They're part of something bigger, a network of dormant colonies spread across dozens of worlds. The coordinates are hidden in the genetic database, but not where they'll think to look. He glanced over his shoulder, clearly running out of time. Remember the song? Our song? The patterns weren't just beautiful, they were coordinates. Stellar coordinates, find them. Stop this from happening again, and Naria, let yourself love again. The universe doesn't give us second chances without reason. The hologram faded, leaving them in the soft glow of the memory crystals. Naria's markings had shifted to a deep, intense blue Cashin had never seen before. The song, she whispered. Of course. Marcus encoded the data into a bioluminescent frequency pattern, a duet we created together. The mimics couldn't copy it because it required both human and Ladarian input to complete. Can you recreate it? Cashin asked, already understanding where this was going. Naria turned to him, her violet eyes reflecting the crystal light. Not alone. The pattern needs both parts, the steady human heartbeat and the Ladarian luminescence. Marcus knew, he knew someday I'd find someone else who could help complete the sequence. Around them, the memory crystals began to pulse in harmony, responding to the growing connection between them. Cashin felt his heart rate synchronize naturally with Naria's markings, just as it had on the station. The mimics are still out there, he said quietly, waiting to wake more of their kind. Yes, Naria's hand found his, their suited fingers intertwining. But now we have a chance to stop them together. The garden seemed to approve, the crystals glowing brighter, reflecting not just the memories of the past but the possibilities of the future. As Cashin and Naria began working to decode the hidden message in their combined rhythms, neither noticed the small, dark shape that detached itself from the shadows, silently making its way toward the garden's communication array. The race to prevent another tragedy had begun, and this time the stakes were higher than just one colony. But in the gentle light of the memory gardens, surrounded by echoes of loves lost and found, both human and Ladarian felt something they hadn't expected to find in the ruins of Kepler 7. Hope. The warning came too late. By the time the garden's ancient security systems detected the intrusion, the mimic had already reached the communication array. Cashin and Naria raced through the crystalline passages, their footsteps echoing off the luminescent walls. They'll be able to triangulate our position. Naria's voice was tight with urgency, her markings pulsing rapid warnings. We have minutes, maybe less. Cashin pulled up the shuttle's remote systems on his suit display. The engines are already cycling. We'll head for the magnetic disruption zones in the northern wastes. But first, he gestured to a partially hidden alcove. We need to decode that song. They sealed themselves in the small chamber, surrounded by the oldest memory crystals in the garden. Their light was deeper here, more profound, carrying echoes of countless generations. The sequence has to be perfect, Naria explained, removing her gloves to place her hands on the central crystal. Human heartbeat as the foundation, Ladarian bioluminescence as the cipher. Marcus and I discovered it by accident during our compatibility tests. Cashin removed his own gloves, feeling the crystal's subtle vibration. Guide me through it. Naria's markings began to pulse in a complex pattern like music made visible. Match your heartbeat to my base frequency. Let everything else fade away. Cashin closed his eyes, focusing on the rhythm of his heart. Years of emergency medicine had taught him to control his vital signs, but this was different. This was like learning to speak a new language, one written in light and life itself. The crystal between them began to warm, responding to their combined biorhythms. In his mind's eye, Cashin saw patterns emerging, star charts, vectors, coordinates hidden in the spaces between pulses. That's it, Naria whispered, her markings synchronizing perfectly with his heartbeat. The sequence is. An explosion rocked the garden, sending crystalline shards raining down around their sealed chamber. Through the translucent walls, they could see dark figures moving with unnatural grace, their forms shifting like smoke. They're trying to scramble our signals, Naria's markings flickered with effort as she maintained the decoding sequence. But they can't replicate this. They can't fake the connection between. She stopped abruptly, violet eyes widening as the final pattern clicked into place. The central crystal blazed with sudden clarity, projecting a stellar map across the chamber walls. Dozens of points illuminated, each marking a dormant mimic colony. The invasion was never meant to be isolated, Cashin understood suddenly. Kepler-7 was just a test run. These other colonies, they're all near-populated worlds. Worlds with genetic diversity they could adapt and absorb, Nyria confirmed grimly. Becoming anyone, everyone, until nothing of the original species remained. Another explosion, closer this time. The chamber's seals began to whine under the pressure. Cashin quickly copied the star map data to his suit systems, then turned to Nyria. We have what we need, time to go. But Nyria stood motionless, her markings pulsing with a strange determination. The gardens, they're more than just memories, they're a weapon. The crystals carry the pure genetic signature of my people, unchanged by time or evolution. Nyria, Cashin sensed where her thoughts were leading. Whatever you're planning. The mimics can't replicate our bioluminescence perfectly because it's quantum entangled, she continued, her hands spreading across the crystal surface. If I overload the garden's crystals, the resonance will disrupt their ability to maintain stable forms. It will give us a chance to reach the shuttle to warn everyone. It would also destroy everything here, Cashin protested. Your people's memories, your history. Some memories are worth sacrificing to protect the future. Nyria's markings flared with fierce intensity. Marcus understood that, now I do too. The chamber's outer seal gave way with a shriek of stressed metal. Through the breach, they could see the mimics approaching, their forms rippling between borrowed shapes. Nyria's hands began to glow, her markings reaching impossible brightness as she poured her energy into the crystal network. Run for the shuttle, I'll be right behind you. Not happening, Cashin stepped forward, placing his hands over hers on the crystal surface. Whatever we do together. Their eyes met in the growing light, and something passed between them. Understanding, trust, and something deeper neither was ready to name. Nyria's markings synchronized with his heartbeat one final time as they triggered the overload. The garden exploded with pure bioluminescent energy, a wave of quantum disruption that sent the mimics reeling, their stolen forms dissolving into chaos. Cashin and Nyria ran through the cascade of falling crystals, each shard containing generations of memory raining down like starlight. They reached the shuttle just as the garden's power core went critical. As they lifted off, the mountain range behind them erupted in a spectacular display of light and energy, taking with it centuries of Ladarian history and any mimics who had infiltrated the complex. In the shuttle's cockpit, Nyria watched her people's memories fade into the storm clouds below. Her markings were dim with grief and exhaustion, but when Cashin gently took her hand, they brightened with a new pattern, one that spoke not of what was lost, but what might yet be found. Where do we go now? She asked softly. Cashin pulled up the stolen coordinates on the navigation display. We warn everyone we can, stop the other colonies from waking, and then. Then we make some new memories. As the shuttle broke atmosphere, leaving the ruins of Kepler-7 behind, Nyria's markings pulsed with a pattern that echoed both past and future. A song of endings and beginnings, written in starlight and hope. 3 months after the destruction of the memory gardens, Cashin stood before the Interstellar Council, his testimony drawing to a close. Behind him, star charts highlighted the locations of discovered mimic colonies, most now contained and neutralized thanks to the quantum resonance data they'd salvaged from Kepler-7. The threat isn't entirely eliminated, he concluded, but we understand it now. More importantly, we understand how to fight it. In the gallery, Nyria sat quietly, her markings glowing with calm certainty. She'd already given her testimony, explaining how her people's bioluminescent technology had been adapted into detection systems now standard on every colonial outpost. The council chambers emptied slowly, delegates discussing ramifications and preparations. Nyria waited until they were alone before approaching Cashin, her markings shifting to the intimate frequency only he could recognize now. They're reopening Kepler-7, she said softly. The terraforming systems are repairable. They're asking for volunteers to help rebuild. Cashin turned to her, nodding how her markings had changed over the months, stronger now, more confident, though still carrying echoes of past sorrows. Are you thinking of going back? I've been thinking about a lot of things. Naria's violet eyes met his. About memory and time and how the universe sometimes gives us second chances we don't expect. They walked together through the station's observation deck, where other Ladarian survivors had gathered. The small community was growing as more came forward, drawn by news of the resistance against the mimics. Many bore markings of grief, but also of healing. Marcus's last message, Naria continued, stopping to watch the stars. About letting myself love again, I didn't understand then, thought it was just his way of trying to give me permission to move on. But now. Her markings pulsed with a pattern Cashin had come to know well, uncertainty mingled with hope. He waited, letting her find the words. When I first felt your heartbeat sync with my markings, I was terrified, she admitted. It felt like betrayal, like I was replacing him, but that's not how love works, is it? It's not about replacement, it's about growth. Cashin gently took her hand, watching their combined rhythms create new patterns of light beneath her skin. The memory gardens taught us that every moment leaves its mark. We don't lose the past by embracing the future. The future, Naria echoed, her free hand tracing patterns on the observation window. They're talking about establishing new gardens on Kepler 7, not just for memories this time, but for research. Continuing what Marcus and I started about human-Ladarian compatibility. I hear they need good doctors out there, Cashin said carefully. Someone who understands both species. Naria's markings brightened with silent laughter. Are you volunteering, Dr. Reed? That depends. He turned to face her fully. The quantum resonance between human and Ladarian genetics, it's strongest in pairs, isn't it? Partners who choose to face the future together. Yes, she whispered, her markings synchronizing with his heartbeat in that perfect way they'd discovered in the gardens. The resonance requires trust, understanding, and love, Cashin finished softly. Around them, the station's lights dimmed for night's cycle, leaving them in the glow of distant stars and Naria's bioluminescence. In that gentle light, they were no longer just survivors of tragedy, but pioneers of something new, something that bridged the gap between species, between past and future. The gardens taught us that memories have power, Naria said, her markings creating patterns that danced across both their skin. But they also taught us that the most important patterns are the ones we choose to create ourselves. Cashin drew her closer, feeling their rhythms align. Then let's create something beautiful. Above them, through the observation window, Kepler 7 was visible as a distant point of light, no longer a monument to loss, but a beacon of renewal. As Naria's markings painted their shared heartbeat across the darkness, they began planning their return to the planet that had brought them together. Not to reclaim what was lost, but to build something new from the echoes of the past. Something that would show both their species that love, like light, finds its way through any darkness. That even in the depths of space, hearts can align, creating harmonies that transcend the boundaries of world and form. And in the starlit quiet of the observation deck, two rhythms became one pattern, writing the first notes of a new song, one that would echo through whatever future awaited them among the stars.